the beginning of the 2018 trade war, a turning point in global economics. In 2018, the United States, under President Donald Trump's leadership, launched an unprecedented trade war that reshaped the global economic landscape. Trump, a strong advocate of protectionist trade policies, believed that the U.S. had long been exploited by unfair trade practices. His stance resonated with many Americans who felt left behind by globalization. Addressing these concerns was a key promise of his presidential campaign, and once in office, he took decisive action against what he viewed as economic injustices. The primary targets of Trump's trade policies were Canada, Mexico, and China, three of America's largest trading partners. He accused these nations of maintaining unfair trade surpluses with the U.S., engaging in intellectual property theft, and benefiting disproportionately from globalization at America's expense. To counter these perceived injustices, Trump imposed tariffs on imports from these countries, marking a significant departure from decades of U.S. trade policy, which had largely favored free trade and multilateral agreements. This shift signaled a new era in American trade strategy. While past administrations had championed globalization as a driver of economic growth, the Trump administration prioritized national interests over global economic integration. The government argued that imposing tariffs was essential to protecting American jobs and industries from unfair competition. However, critics warned that these measures would lead to higher consumer prices, disrupt supply chains, and trigger a global trade war with severe economic consequences. Escalation and global reactions. The U.S. tariffs sent shockwaves through the global economy as targeted countries retaliated with their own trade restrictions. Canada faced tariffs on key exports such as steel, aluminum, and lumber, industries crucial to its economy. Mexico, a close trading partner, was hit with similar tariffs and faced threats of broader economic penalties tied to immigration policies. China, however, bore the brunt of the trade war. The Trump administration imposed tariffs on hundreds of billions of dollars worth of Chinese goods, including electronics, machinery, furniture, and clothing. These measures were aimed at forcing China to change its trade policies, particularly regarding intellectual property theft, forced technology transfers, and state subsidies that gave Chinese companies an unfair advantage. The global reaction to these tariffs was swift and intense. As countries imposed retaliatory measures, fears of an all-out trade war grew. Financial markets experienced volatility as investors grappled with uncertainty over global trade flows. Businesses that relied on imported materials and components faced rising costs, many of which were passed on to consumers in the form of higher prices. The economic impact extended beyond just large corporations. Small businesses and local economies also struggled to cope with the sudden shifts in trade policies. Economic and political ramifications. The trade war had far-reaching implications beyond economics. Trade negotiations became increasingly tense, with world leaders scrambling to mitigate the fallout. Analysts warned that prolonged trade conflicts could slow global economic growth and heighten financial instability. Stock markets fluctuated in response to trade developments, while businesses and policymakers sought solutions to minimize disruptions. Despite the challenges, some businesses adapted to new realities by diversifying their supply chains and seeking alternative trade partners. However, for many industries, the trade war led to difficult decisions regarding pricing, staffing, and investment. Consumer spending, a key driver of economic growth, also suffered due to rising prices and economic uncertainty. The justification of national security. The Trump administration justified its aggressive trade actions by citing national security concerns. It argued that the U.S. was too dependent on foreign imports for critical materials like steel and aluminum, which were essential for both civilian and military applications. According to Trump, this dependence posed a risk to national security, especially in times of crisis. By imposing tariffs, the administration aimed to revive domestic manufacturing and reduce reliance on foreign suppliers. However, critics question the legitimacy of this argument, suggesting that the real motivation behind the tariffs was economic protectionism rather than national security. They pointed out that Canada and Mexico were long-standing allies and that China, while a strategic competitor, did not pose an immediate military threat. Some feared that using national security as a justification for trade restrictions could set a dangerous precedent. leading other countries to adopt similar protectionist measures. This could ultimately undermine global trade rules and create further instability in international economic relations. Lesson for the future. The 2018 trade war highlighted complexities of modern global trade and the risks associated with abrupt policy shifts. While the Trump administration aimed to correct perceived trade imbalances, the broader consequences of its actions, rising costs, disrupted supply chains, and economic uncertainty, were felt worldwide. As global trade policies continue to evolve, the lessons from this period will shape future economic strategies. Moving forward, international cooperation and a balanced approach to trade will be essential to ensuring stability and prosperity in the global economy. The long-term impact of Trump's trade policies remains a subject of debate, but one thing is certain. The trade war of 2018 left an indelible mark on the world's economic and political landscape.